Hi friends, welcome back to the Parsonage Dining Room. So today I'll be doing a brief reflection on Thanksgiving. So since we're not having any Thanksgiving services at any of my churches, it's just something that we haven't done in a number of years now, and I don't think it's as common anymore. I thought maybe I would do a couple scripture readings and a brief reflection on the Thanksgiving season, just to kind of boost our faith during the week here as we enter into a potentially stressful time, but also a really joyful and time of thanks. So before I read, I just want to let you know I have a bit of a cold. I'm on the mend, but my voice might sound a little funny. I hope it's not too intolerable. So our first reading is from Deuteronomy chapter 26, 1 through 11. When you have come into the land that the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance to possess, and you possess it, and settle in it, you shall take some of the first of all the fruit of the ground, which you harvest from the land that the Lord your God is giving you, and you shall put it in a basket, and go to the place that the Lord your God will choose as a dwelling for his name. You shall go to the priest who is in office at the time and say, Today I declare to the Lord your God that I have come into the land that the Lord swore to our ancestors to give us. And the priest takes the basket from your hand and sets it down before the altar of the Lord your God, and you shall make this response before the Lord your God. A wandering Aramean was my ancestor. He went down into Egypt and lived there as an alien, few in number, and there he began a great nation, mighty and populous. When the Egyptians treated us harshly and afflicted us, imposing hard labor on us, we cried to the Lord, the God of our ancestors. And the Lord heard our voice and saw our affliction, our toil and our oppression. And the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, with a terrifying display of power and with signs and wonders, and he brought us into this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. So now I bring the first fruit of the ground to you, O Lord, that you have given me. You shall set it down before the Lord your God, and bow down before the Lord your God. Then you, together with the Levites and the aliens who reside among you, shall celebrate with all the bounty that the Lord your God has given you and to your house. I don't think I've ever noticed that before. Verse 11, Then you, together with the Levites and the aliens who reside among you, shall celebrate with all the bounty that the Lord your God has given to you and your house. Our next reading is from John, Gospel of John, chapter 6, 25 through 35. When they found him on the other side of the sea, Jesus, they said to him, Rabbi, when did you come here? Jesus answered them, Very truly, I tell you, you are looking for me, not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves. Do you work, or do not work, for the food that perishes, but for food that endures for eternal life, for the Son of Man will give you. For it is on him that God the Father has set his seal. Then they said to him, What must we do to perform the works of God? And Jesus answered them, This is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent. So they said to him, What sign are you going to give us then, so that we may see it and believe? What work are you performing? Our ancestors ate manna in the wilderness, as it is written, He gave them bread from heaven to eat. Then Jesus said, Very truly I tell you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven, but my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God, that is that which comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. They said to him, Sir, give us this bread always. And Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. The word of the Lord. So I don't really have much written down by way of notes, but I wanted to reflect on these readings in light of Thanksgiving, and I can see why the lectionary, this is the Revised Common Lectionary, used both of these passages for Thanksgiving time because they're both about food. But it makes me kind of think about, or at least the conclusion I'm drawing in my head, is the Thanksgiving season seems an awful lot to be about food. I know that commercials within the last probably 10 years, maybe more actually, I lose track of time, started calling Thanksgiving Day Turkey Day. What are you doing for Turkey Day? It's not even Thanksgiving anymore, it's about the food that you eat on that day, Turkey Day. Some of us don't even eat turkey on Thanksgiving. I hear a lot of people saying, well, actually, I don't even like turkey. And so they don't eat turkey on Thanksgiving. They might eat ham. But when you think of Thanksgiving, if you just picture that word, you might think of those children's drawings, like someone who puts their hand on a piece of paper and traces it and turns it into a turkey. I remember doing that. Or you might think of gravy or stuffing. I think of stuffing with gravy over it and mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce. I immediately think of the food. In fact, some of the biggest things that we do on Thanksgiving is eat and watch TV. We watch the football game. We think of Thanksgiving as a time, some of us, to celebrate with your family, getting together and hearing how everyone's doing. Some of us, it's sort of like a penance to be paid. Well, we don't see our people very often, so Thanksgiving, once a year, we all sit down together and have a meal, and we talk about uncomfortable things around the Thanksgiving dinner table. It's always a joke. Sometimes it's true. But Thanksgiving seems to be a lot about food. Recently, I won't go into it too much, but I read a horror story that had a main character who is in need of housing, food, and a wound to be looked after. And he makes his way to a hotel of sorts. And in this hotel, everyone's sitting down to dinner when he gets there. And the people just kept eating and eating and eating and eating. And it was actually very scary. Just reading the story and feeling the uncomfortableness of the person telling the story, saying he finished his plate and then there was another course and there was another course, and they kept encouraging him to eat more and eat more. And they said, oh, but the main course is turkey. You can't be done yet. The main course is turkey. And by the end, he can't eat anymore. He's starting to get very uncomfortable and nervous because he can't eat anymore, but people just keep eating like their life depends on it. And there was something really unnerving about that. And I can't quite tell you what it was, but it disturbed me immensely. So it reminds me of when I was overseas and I ate my fill, and then the people hosting me said, have more, eat more. And I continued to eat, and I felt very sick. But there's a love language of asking people to eat more food, but when somebody says they're done, it's best to respect that. Anyway, I want to go into a little bit more about the idea of how eating is not only a very good thing, but can also be kind of a bad thing too. We know one of the 7 deadly sins is gluttony. So much like that horror story where the man is eating and they keep encouraging to eat more, and he's noticing people are just wolfing down food and they don't look well. There's something strange about that. What is it about eating that can be misused? Now, I'm not suggesting that our Thanksgiving meals are gluttonous. I think some of us are very good about what we eat and how much we eat, and sometimes it is really good to feast. Sometimes if you eat too much on a feast day, it's just an outflowing of joy. But a lot of things should be in moderation. So I wanted to remind us that food is important, not only the amount, but the kinds of food that we eat, because we are what we eat. I've heard that before. When I was younger, I had no idea what it meant, but within the last few years, I've done a number of sermons that had that phrasing in it, because it just is a very good reminder that we are literally made up of the things that we eat. So maybe the more hamburgers we eat, we aren't necessarily going to start to look or smell like a hamburger, but I think that whatever we're putting into our bodies is being broken down, and the nutrients and the components of that are being used to replenish and restore our bodies. So it's very important to be aware of how much and what we put into our bodies. So in these two stories that we heard from Deuteronomy and John, I think what stood out the most to me when I first read through was the food in the story. Now, it could just be that's where my mind is at because Thanksgiving is coming. But I think that was sort of the purpose. Deuteronomy talks about you shall put the first fruits of the land in a basket and bring it to the priest, and you should talk to God and say, I am the family, the descendants of a wandering Aramean, and here I am, and I'm in the land that you gave us. And if you notice what the land was referred to as, oh goodness, Fritz is over here making noises. That's my house cat. But the land is called the land of milk and honey. It isn't the land with beautiful poplar trees or the land that has the nice stream wandering through it. It's the land of milk and honey. And milk and honey are for eating. And then when we start to look at the John passage, the people are excited that Jesus is there. Hey, when'd you get here? And he's like, you're looking for me not because I am the Son of God, but because I do miracles that you like, such as multiplying bread. So some of the things that we remember most, I think, in the Bible often have to do with food. And that could just be me again, but when I think of the Passover story, the things that we remember about the Passover, well, the blood on the doors, the slaughtered lambs, but the food, unleavened bread. Or when the people traveling through the desert, the people were grumbling. Why? People were grumbling because they're hungry and they're thirsty. It has to do with food, so God sends manna, food for them. Many of the stories that we deal with have to do with food or starvation or feasting or fasting. So it's these people in Jesus' time, when we start to look into the New Testament, can point back to the Old Testament and say, well, we're looking for specific miracles, Lord, to prove that you are who you say you are, and to prove that we should follow you. We want specific miracles, and miracles that were done before. How about the manna in the desert? Moses provided manna for us, so you should do something like that for us. They're looking for practical ways to nourish their bodies. I assume that starvation was fairly common at this time if you're somebody who doesn't have a lot of money or resources, or if you're in a drought year and your livelihood is based on whatever you have. I assume that running out of food was a more common issue. But when they come to Jesus looking for that miracle, it's not something that's sustainable. The manna lasted for as long as they needed it. But Jesus wants to give them something greater than just something that will nourish their bodies. He says, you're looking for me not because you want the truth, not because you want to be connected in a way that will sustain your souls, but you just want something to sustain your bodies. And he says, look for the living bread. Look for something a little deeper. And I think it kind of went over their heads in this story. Sure, give us this bread always. He's talking about the bread from heaven, the true bread, and like, give us that bread then. Give us something that will always sustain us. But I still think they're thinking about something that's going to nourish their bodies. So, as modern people, we can kind of read these stories and reflect and sometimes laugh. Sometimes these stories I think they're meant to be a little funny. But it makes me wonder, do we look for the living bread? Do we look for the true bread? Or are we still very much like those people? Well, if you are who you say you are, then give us something really good that's going to sustain our bodies or sustain our family, or that's going to be a practical way and show our friends. We're looking for something sort of outward. So I think that in a world where it's very tempting to look at the outside, the external affairs, the delicious plates of food set before us, maybe even to be thankful for it, but not in an authentic way. It's thankful for this meal, and then we kind of forget within a couple weeks. I think that maybe we can start looking for something that's a little bit deeper. What do we have that's been carrying us through that we can be thankful for into the future? What do we have within ourselves, our souls, our spiritual lives that really is actually very nourishing for keeping us wanting to be alive? So maybe this Thanksgiving, we can be really thankful for the meal. We can be very thankful for the turkey. We can talk about how grateful we are because there's many of those who are less fortunate than us, and we're very fortunate and we're very glad to be here. We can say that and we can actually mean it, and it can be a very good thing. And maybe we can start to shift our focus beyond just what's in front of us, that meal together, just that one time, but into a Thanksgiving sort of life, where we're thankful for all of the different aspects that help fuel us and feed not only our bodies, but our souls. So I think that life comes from food. We are what we eat. And life comes from doing things that we like to do, hobbies, and meeting up with family and friends. Whether or not it's I want to because I'm excited to see my family, or I'm paying penance by seeing my family once a year for Thanksgiving. Life comes from many different sources, but that true life comes from the living bread, comes from the true God. So maybe this Thanksgiving, we can make it beyond just a day of giving thanks and into finding the source of that true bread, the true turkey dinner. Is something that truly feeds and nourishes your soul. So, and if you're wondering more what that is, I encourage you to connect with one of your local pastors. We'd be happy to talk with you about it. So, anyway, I hope that that's something that is applicable to your life. I really hope that we have lovely Thanksgivings, and I'm sorry if you have to go somewhere and pay penance for your Thanksgiving dinner. I hope that it's something joyful and that you enjoy spending time with your people rather than, I have to do this once a year and then it's over for the year. I hope it's something that's joyful for you. And enjoy your food, enjoy your feast, and continue to search for that true bread.